Welcome listeners to this exclusive interview, specifically meant, of course, to react to recent issues with regards to PURA's fine against Jah Oil, of course, one of the biggest oil companies in the Gambia and owned by a Gambian. We understand that last week, of course, PURA announced it has fined the company over $1 million with regards to their two petrol stations, which the regulatory authority deemed were built in an unfit area in a situation that did not meet the criteria for petrol stations. We have the General Manager of the oil company, Mr. Mamadou Hydra, with us in this exclusive interview. We will begin by, of course, welcoming him. Mr. Hydra, welcome to this exclusive interview.
Thank you, Omar.
We are glad to have you.
Glad to be here.
Like I said in the introduction, your company, of course, has been in the news for all the wrong reasons of recent. PURA, of course, has announced that they have fined you about $1 million over two petrol stations that they perceived were built in an area that did not meet the standards for a petrol station. We will allow you to briefly give us a rundown of how did you come to the conclusion of building those two petrol stations, because we understand you have already accused the company of trying to target the petrol station. But before we read there, you just briefly tell us how did you come to the conclusion of beginning the constructions of those two petrol stations?
Thank you very much, Omar. It's a very good question. I'll first give you a brief explanation for you to understand the issue we have at hand here. Jah Oil Company has a target to begin with for 2020, and then we targeted 10 petrol stations to expand the business, which is normal for every business person. And we applied for these stations alongside with, that is Welingara and Kairaba, alongside other stations. So when PURA and all the other stakeholders looked at it, they came back with approving the orders except the two. And then the reasons they gave for those two in the 2018 petroleum regulation, there is a clause there. How it gets there, they don't know. They can explain, I don't know. Saying that every petrol station, for it to be eligible, for it to be suitable, it has to have at least 50 meters. It has to be 50 meters from a place of residence or public assembly, mosque, things like that, schools. So based on that particular regulation, they said Kairaba and Welingara didn't qualify. Then when we looked at it critically, we looked at the area, we looked at the location, we said, wait a minute, if these two places don't qualify, then there is no petrol station that qualifies in the country. And I implore you as journalists, please take a tour of the Greater Banjul areas, have a measuring tape with a colleague. Wherever you see a petrol station, just take a measuring tape and measure. You will not get the 50 meters. So we wrote again to them that we are appealing their decision based on the fact that the 50-meter rule is not feasible. We all know this. And at the same time, we asked them again, how come this 50-meter rule is coming into play now when it has been there since 2018? And between 2018 to the period, they are saying now, no, so many petrol stations came into being. And they didn't qualify that 50-meter rule, including our own petrol stations that they said qualified, that they approved previously. So based on that, we appealed for them to revisit their decision for the simple reason that, for example, Welingara is not neighboring any resident. It is cordoned off by roads on each side. We even bought extra property just to make that happen, to add it to the property. So we said, go and make the measurement. Wilingara is about 99 meters by 70 something when you measure it. There's no petrol station here that has that. It would be very rare to find that. Even if you have one, you only need one. So based on that, we told them to go and revisit the place. Kairaba Avenue also is on a major road, as we can see. And it has another secondary road on the other side. So we are not being sandwiched, for example. So based on this, we said reconsider the decision because the 50-meter rule is not feasible. So they said, okay, they will go and revisit. They revisited again. All these letters and the correspondence are available. And they came again, they said the same thing, that it is not feasible. And then we appealed again, and then they invited us in a meeting. In that meeting, we record the same issues. We said, why are we talking about this 50-meter rule now? When this particular regulation was severally violated from the inception, this has been our argument with them. And then we asked them, how can they sell the idea now that the 50-meter rule stands when it has never stood before? You see our point? So we asked them for an explanation as to why. They themselves accepted in that meeting that the 50-meter rule is a problem, it's problematic, and it's hampering development, and they don't even know how it crept into the regulation. So we said, then now what is the way forward? They said they are working very hard to try to change it, to make it agreeable, and replace it with more stringent health and safety measures that stations have to put in place before they could be licensed. We said, good, let's work on the regulation then. Because let us not look at Jah Oil. Jah Oil has already got what they have to get. But 5–10 years down this line, it is our children, or maybe they themselves, the regulators, one day, who knows, they will want to go into the petroleum industry to invest. If that regulation is there, you are barring the future from getting into the market. And that's not fair. There are a lot of people out there who want to invest in the petroleum industry. So now, if you don't do something about that, it will buy everybody. At least now it's better. Maybe you have few swaths of land with 50-meter difference between very few. But 5–10 years down the line, you will not find them. Then that means you've closed the door to that avenue of investment to Gambians. So we told them, let's change it. They said, okay. When we said, okay, they will change it, they will work on trying to see how to change it, then we appeal in that meeting again. We said, okay, since now we are talking about replacing it, allow us to build the structure. That means we are not operating a petrol station, just allow us to build the structure whilst we wait for the regulation. And they said, okay, that could be done, but let's not write. We wrote a letter, the letter is here, thanking them for that gesture, and then whilst we work with the regulation. This is why we started building Welingara and Kairaba, because by then, all the building permits from the physical plan were already acquired. You know, it is all approved. So now the only thing is between us and PURA. So this is why we started Welingara and Kairaba.
Quite clear, but the issue is now, and what probably our listeners and of course those who are watching us will want to know is whether PURA has given you the go-ahead in terms of documentation. Did they write to you to say you can go ahead?
This is what I'm saying. You see, when we had that deadlock about this, it is not qualified because of the 50-meter rule that just crept in, which they have never applied on anybody. Take note of that. Never applied before to anyone except Jah Oil this time. So they realized that it's a messy situation and something has to be done to clean the mess. This is why we are talking about even changing the regulation, so that we can all start on a clean slate. Then we appeal to them, and there's a letter we wrote to them based on that, and we quoted that meeting that we sent to them. The letter, the copy is here. I think I gave it to somebody here, so you can take a look at it if you want. And then it is based on that we started the structures.
Did they write to you?
It's what I'm
to
saying.
ask you to go ahead. You are telling me
this is what I'm saying.
You wrote to PURA.
Yes, we wrote.
Did they write back to say you can go ahead? That's the question.
Ask for the minutes of that meeting, because it was in a meeting. As a journalist, ask for the minutes. It was minuted. It was discussed and accepted there. We could go ahead with the structural work, okay? Whilst they work on the listing, on the regulation. Then we didn't stop there. We wrote to the Minister of Petroleum for them to mediate between us and PURA, because it's the line ministry. So when we wrote to Petroleum, indicating our concerns, Petroleum wrote back saying, okay, they will put the matter under consideration so that they can work out a solution. So a few weeks after that, I think it's less than 2 weeks, Petroleum invited a stakeholders meeting. All the stakeholders in the petroleum industry were invited, including PURA, everybody. We were there. And then the theme of the meeting was, what do we do, because there are a lot of problems about this regulation, and this place doesn't qualify because of 50 meters, and that place qualifies and it doesn't meet the criteria. What is going on? Everybody in that meeting, all agreed that the 50 meter is unfeasible. It cannot be applicable. PURA themselves accepted. They said it is posing more problem to their work because it is not feasible. So based on that unanimous agreement there, the permanent secretary who was chairing it then said, okay, then we have all agreed that this is a regulation that cannot work. It means we have to, it's a bad thing and it is hampering development, then we should change it. Do we agree? Yes, we agree. Then they said, okay, that was adopted there, that they will change it and replace it with something better. So we were there, then they wrote again, then invited a validation meeting whereby to validate it, whether they drafted it and then it was validated. That, okay, this is what we're going to adopt now. The 50 meter is gone. Then we asked this crucial question, when is it going to come into force? First they told us, oh, this thing is a regulation, it will come into force before the end of the year, that is December 2020. By then, Welingara was already at an advanced stage. By then, we envisaged to open Welingara by the 20th of December. Based on the fact that we have an understanding, it is adopted that and it is validated that the regulation is going to go by the 20th, we said, okay, we will try to open Welingara by the 20th. By then, we'll be in compliance because the only regulation barring us will not be there. Okay, then we were there, then later we received a message from them that, oh, there's a delay, but it will come into force by the 1st of January. Then we wrote again to PURA and informing them that, okay, instead of December, just in the name of compliance, we'll open the place by January 1st. By then the obnoxious regulation is gone. So this is why Welingara came into being, a petrol station. Now, when that happened in January 8, on the 8th of January, I wrote another letter. But before writing that letter, I went to PURA. I met them and I said, I'm here to just seek for an advice. Since now we are all comfortable with the fact that the old regulation is gone, because this is January now. It was said on the 1st, now we are on it's around the 8th. What do we do to be in compliance? Do I have to bring a whole new package of application? Or do I just need to write to rekindle the old application? And I was advised there that no, you just have to write and reapply. Based on that, I went to the office. I wrote a letter reapplying for those 2 stations based on the fact that the old regulation is gone. That was on the 8th of January. So when I wrote that letter, I was sitting down, comfortable, waiting for a reply in kind. Just to tell me, he said yes, he said no, or some other reasons. I'm just waiting for anything. But instead of receiving any reply from PURA concerning what I wrote to them, trying to be in compliance, trying to work with them from the beginning, then that is when they slap us with that fine. So when we didn't receive the fine, it was first published, and then I received calls from people, did you see what they published? I said, what? They said, Jah Oil is fine for, is fined somewhere around $1 million or whatever. Then I said, I rushed to the office, I asked, did you guys receive anything from PURA? They said no. Later in the day, the letter came. Then I looked at it, it is 1.2 million. Then we discussed it. Then I said, this must be a huge misunderstanding, because when they said blatant refusal to comply, despite series of warning, at least as an investor in the petroleum sector and a major investor, I'm not in compliance. For example, you wrote to me once, I appeal. If you still want to stick to your gun, at least give me 2 warnings more, at least 3, and then you can slap me. But that was the only one, and then we appealed that one. In fact, we were in negotiation, constant contact concerning that one. That is why we went to that validation. That's why we repealed the regulation, and all that is part of that negotiation. So when I wrote to you, PURA, and then say, now we want to reapply, what I expected them is to say, okay, you know what? We cannot approve it based on this or that this time. At least that would have been agreeable. Then we can sit again and say, what is going on? If it is something we need to fix, we'll fix it. But no, they just slapped us on the 15th, that is on a Friday, and giving us 72 hours. That was on a Friday. Then we put heads together, you know, knowing our CEO, being a very, very law-abiding person. If you guys know him very well, he never likes to trouble anybody. This is why he will always give in to whatever. And then he insisted. He told me, go there and pay. I said, no, but we didn't even reply yet to have a dialogue. He said, no, it's a fine. Pay it. You know? Then on Monday, he gave me a check. He said, go and find out, because something is confusing. We don't know how much and how to pay. So I went with the blank check there. And this time I asked them, I said, I'm here to find out, how do we pay? Do we have to go to the bank? Or do we, what do I do to pay? First, that's what I want to know. And then secondly, I want to know how much do I have to pay, because it's confusing. Then I think there's a short consultation between their finance officer and some of their officials, and they came back to me and said, it's 1.2 million. Where I was seated, that's where I drafted the check and handed over, take a copy, and then they gave me a receipt, and that's it, end of story. And then from there, then we said, okay, now that they have given us this with fine for the wrong reasons, now we want to ask the hard question of, why is it Jah Oil this time? This 50-meter rule has been alive since 2018.
We'll come to there, General Manager,
yes.
But let us fix the issue of authorization. You talked about the fact that this was agreed in a meeting. In another meeting, you validated whatever meeting points that you agreed on. But this is totally different from PURA writing a letter authorizing you to go ahead with the construction and the petrol station. The question is, did they write a letter to authorize you to go ahead? That's the question.
One thing I would like to answer that, but I want you to ask PURA for the minutes of those meetings.
Yeah, but answer the question.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying. I'm coming to that. Yeah. PURA would not write to that effect, because it was a negotiation, trying to negotiate over an existing rule that they have hit us with. Come on. Sensibly, I don't think they will put any pen on paper to write that, go ahead and do this. All they can say is, okay, you appeal for the structural work, do the structural work. Okay? Just send us a letter requesting that, which we did on our part. We even quoted the meeting where it was agreed in that letter, then send it to them. And then the structure was going on. You know, when they become pissed, I will tell you this, sorry for that, is because when the structural work was going, the building, the main building, they didn't say anything. We are next door to them, Skyraba Avenue. This was since when? September. Slabs should have come at least before the end of September, right? If something is wrong. Sensibly, right? It was still in September. They never said anything. The building was going on. But where they disagreed with us, which they could have even told us, I would have suspended. is that why are we building the canopy? You know, the canopy where this for the island. That is their problem. They said, why, when they said the building, they didn't say canopy, but when you say structure, you didn't differentiate what structures can we touch and what structures we cannot touch. So this is, I think, what triggers them. I think it's a matter of somebody having an ego to say something to make sure that, you know, his voice stands. My opinion, this is how I see it, but this is what happened.
We will come to the realities of probably the possibilities that were there for you to discuss this out. You know, there were numerous channels that you could have used to avoid, PURA could have used to avoid the fine. Ask business partners. Of course, they are regulating you, but you are also their partners. But we should look at the issue of authorization. Would you accept that you took the risks to go ahead without documentary proof that you were asked to do so? Because a meeting, minutes of a meeting is totally different from a letter authorizing you to do something. It's totally different. Would you agree that you took the risks to go ahead to construct? Because they would have at any time come and say, we didn't even ask you to do it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
But you know, we are human beings. The reason why we are human is because we use our brain a lot. The activities that were going on there from September to date speaks volumes without anybody saying anything. Should speak volume to you. You are a journalist. We are right on their doorstep building that place from September. They are really serious on the fact that there was no authorization and we are building an illegal structure. Before the end of September, we should have got that fine. Or let's say October, or maybe let's say November, or even December.
Let's say.
No, I'm just saying.
Let's assume that they put up a trap
and
you fall onto the trap.
No, the moment you start digging that foundation, they can. Trust me.
That could have been a trap.
No, it's not a trap. It was an agreement. Trust me, it was an agreement. This is why nothing was said all this while. And what even consolidated that agreement more was when we all met, all the stakeholders, and agreed that that obnoxious rule is going. And then we follow it up with a validation that, okay, we are waving goodbye to this. Now it's adopted. Let us wait. It's just a signature now. We are expecting it in December. This is why we first scheduled wheeling data in December. Now when they say, oh, there's some slight delay, we have to shoot for 1st of January. Then we said, okay, we'll push. So this is the problem. We've been engaging PURA from the onset with regards to these two stations, from March of 2020. We've been back and forth, talking, negotiating. And the thorny question we always ask, and I will always ask this, tell me, which petrol station has this 50-meter rule that has passed this 50-meter rule? Tell me, with all your, just point out any, okay, start with Jah Oil, start with our own stations, which of them meet the 50-meter rule? Because I don't want to point fingers.
It is obvious that I'm not here to answer questions.
Because I'm telling you, it didn't exist.
We will come there. We will come there. That could be another. That is a different ball game.
Yes.
That could be, you know, probably taken up by any journalist to investigate, to know whether, probably, you know,
please do that.
You know, there was a foul play in this. But that is a different ball game. Yeah, let us focus on this issue and. Let us put the issue of the 50-meter in the middle of everything here.
Because it's in the
you are a businessman and you are speaking like a businessman. You are only looking at the profit and the interest that comes in. You want to build more petrol stations, but do you also consider the fact that the life of the people that you serve should also be as important to you as your business is? And this includes the government, the Ministry of Petroleum, and PURA. Don't you think it is important that they strictly maintain the regulations on the 50 meters? Because let me tell you, whether you know it or not, when Gambians pass these petrol stations, they complain. They cannot do anything about it, but they complain. But what they normally say is they're owned by the big men. The big men deal with government.
It's a good question, and I'll be very glad to answer this question for you. Maybe listeners who have traveled will agree with me. I haven't seen any country that I've traveled to, the West, for example, from Europe, America, to the Middle East, where this 50-meter rule is applicable. In some countries, you have a petrol station, have residents under a skyline. You understand? You have a petrol station inside a neighborhood whereby residences are surrounding it. This 50-meter rule doesn't exist anywhere. You know what my suspicion is about this 50-meter rule? Because I even investigated a little bit and I asked the people who were at the validation when they were passing the 2018 rule. And the person honestly told me this was never raised. How it crept into the regulation, they don't even know. It, I don't know, secretly scripting or whatever, I don't know. They said because they cannot remember anybody raising that in that validation. Now, to come to that question again about the life of the people, you see, we Gambians have to be careful of one thing. We want this country to develop, right? We want to create employment, right? And we want everything economic-wise and everything to be good. It has to go alongside with investment and expansion of businesses. And you cannot do that without expanding. Do you wonder why businesses stagnate in this country? Like you can find certain businesses in this country that have been here for 10, 15, 20, 25 years. What they were, that's how they are still. They couldn't expand. And that is bad for any country. For Jah Oil, all we want is, when we expand, we create opportunities. For example, wherever we build a petrol station, what we take it as a rule, a house rule, that you employ people from that catchment area. Don't entertain application from anybody else. Take the use there. You know what was our target for 2020? To employ 300 permanent staff for these petrol stations, the 10, plus 150 non-PAM, 450 youths off the street. That's our target. That was our target. We missed it by a little margin. And 2021 is here. We have another target. You see, putting your money in the bonds and banks to enjoy it without going through all this hassle, many people will love it. And that's what many businesses are doing. They have the money, they have the capital, but they are afraid to invest, or they don't want to go through the bullying and the stress of what is happening. So they ended up saying, okay, I'm comfortable with what I'm having. I'm having my bread and butter there, and I have millions in the bank. Lock it there. How does that benefit us as Gambians? This man is going out, all out, to put those millions back and pump it into the economy. I'm expanding. Let people come. Let us work. Who will say in his right mind it's a bad thing?
That was a very good PR for Jah Oil. But now the other issue is here, the issue of the fine. Mm-hmm. You had all the opportunities, mm-hmm, knowing that, let's say what you have said here, back in your arguments, back in the fact that you went ahead with the construction of these petrol stations because there was this verbal agreement in a meeting, and which was, of course, documented, mm-hmm, and kept somewhere. Why didn't you employ the opportunity or the chances you have to appeal against the fine? Because it's not a straightforward thing. You could have appealed it.
You see, Omar, there are certain things. If we had appealed the fine, I'll give you this. You know, here we are talking. You've given me certain difficult questions about what people perceive. If we had appealed that fine, and they said, okay, we've dropped the fine now, You know what next? People will start to say, oh man, these people are untouchable. They have corrupted certain people. The fine is gone, it's disappeared. This is why we insisted. We said, nope, pay it in full. Don't even negotiate on it. That's our driving force into paying the fine, but doesn't mean we agree with the basis of the fine.
Do you have something to hide?
To hide?
Yeah.
No, tell me.
No. If you have all the legal bargains to find this, and you're not doing it because you think people will perceive it as if probably you're working with a certain high officials in government, is there anything you're hiding?
Nothing. You see, Jah Oil is an open book. I always tell these people, it's an open book. You want to meet our CEO, you go and find him in the construction sites. Sometimes you will think he is the chief masonry. Very down to earth. He will interact and go with anybody. Very down to earth. We have nothing to hide. But our social responsibility, we are true to that. Corporate social responsibility. This is why people will misconstrue that sometimes. For example, when we help communities, I don't know whether my boss will even be happy for me to say this. I'm sure he's not going to like it, because he likes doing this thing in the Islamic way that says, if your right hand gives, your left hand shouldn't know. But I will just throw a little bit. Like, for example, when the communities need running water, for example. A lot of communities in this rural Gambia, I wouldn't name them. But as a journalist, maybe you can do some research and finding. Maybe it will point fingers back to us again. We will dig boreholes free of charge with all installation handed over to the villagers. Free of charge. Not a dime. Not only that. For example, hospital needs fuel sometimes. We give. I might be called on the corner side after this interview maybe to say, why did you say this? But I think it's important. We've been giving a lot. So maybe when people see this giving, oh, they're digging boreholes, or they are giving to the hospitals, they are building mosques, they are sponsoring students. We are the only company here, again, that have students in that university. I wouldn't give a single name, in the dozens, that nobody knows. And we don't intend anybody even to know. So things like that and many more. Overseas treatment. We all know how expensive that is. A lot of corporate social responsibility. So some people might construe that, oh, maybe they are working with government X, Y, and Z, supporting their agenda. No, we don't do it for any government. We do it for the people. This is our country. And in 10, 15, 20, 25 years' time, any government comes and meets us in good standing, might then even will have grown even better, inshallah, and we'll do even more. We don't discriminate.
That's quite commendable, MD. It has been a long interview. We will wrap it up very soon, okay, but not before we discuss, of course, the way forward. What next? Probably millions have been spent in these two yet to be complete petrol stations. What next with them? Are you going to, is it going to be a lost investment?
It cannot be a lost investment. We are in negotiation, we are in consultation. Even yesterday we had meetings, today we had meetings. We are constantly in touch, trying to see a way out of this. But I'll give you one example. Have you been to Wellingara? You've not been there.
I hardly go there.
Wellingara, when you go to that gas station today, everybody who drives past that gas will tell you this is the best gas station in the country, and it is true. Space-wise, position-wise, health and safety standard-wise, look at the fences and look at the location. Everybody will agree. That is not the only issue I want to raise here. You have youths who have just been recently employed. And I always say this, what do we do with them if we want to close that place? We send them home, Now tell me, sending those people out and say, okay, well, we are sorry, you have to go home, there is no employment for you again. How does that help us, and how does that even complement the government? You are telling people, please stop using the back ways, risky, is hazardous. We took few just recently, and we intend to take about 450 by 2020, by the end of 2020, which we have missed the target. Now you are telling us, no, stop expanding, close it. You know, we could say, okay, we don't want to go through this headache. Let's lock our money into some bonds and let it just be yielding interest. Then we can enjoy the liberty of just being peacefully enjoying the fruits of the millions you have without considering the people who need your help. That is a very, very unfair thing. And I think every Gambian, this should be a concern to every Gambian that Jah Oil is here for everybody. Do you know it is only our petrol station that gives back every single day to every customer that buys petrol there? Every single day. And they don't even know it. Because every liter of fuel you buy from Jah Oil, you're getting $1 here. It is only us. Check that. When you see 25 in any gas station, go to Jah Oil, you will see 24. And this is our policy. Give back to the people. So I'm just saying that this is our country, this is our Gambia. Let's help the people. Let's help businesses to expand, to employ people and take them off the street. Rather than talking about some mundane policies that has been put there that cannot be that cannot even be practical in the first place. Looked at it in that way. Every law has a human touch. Look at the spirit of it. The regulation, yes, speaks very, very clearly that you this, but put a human touch to it, and they will not be here having this interview. If that human touch was there, look at the people working there. Send them to their family. That's their livelihood. There is no employment in this country. These companies are trying to expand to employ people, and you are telling them, no, you have to stop work. How does that benefit the country? For us, it's not a loose investment. You could turn that place into an office space. We'll make money. Come on. You will make something out of it. But how does it benefit the country? That is my question here. Put a human touch to it.
Put a human touch to it. I think DM, let me say MD, or whether you call it managing director or general manager. Thank you very much.
Thank you
for granting us this interview.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Omar.